Good evening. Tonight, mapping dissent in the Russian blogosphere, an art slam hits New York, and politics by video. Let's start there. Election day is less than 2 weeks off, and across the country, Democrats are on the defensive. The latest Rasmussen poll, for example, has only 30% of voters strongly approving of President Obama and 42% strongly disapproving. That'll be reflected in all sorts of races. In just 2 years, it's quite a reversal. The common wisdom is that the cry for change comes mainly from the right. But this graph of who responds to TV ads and videos that have animated the campaigns suggests that it's not just the Tea Party, but bipartisan outrage that we are now seeing. Here to explain exactly what those multicolor wavy lines mean is Michael Maslansky, CEO of the political research firm Maslansky, Luntz & Partners. He wrote the book, The Language of Trust, Selling Ideas in a World of Skeptics. Welcome to the show. Thank you for coming in. Brian. We're going to show some political ads that are running, and underneath, viewers, you will see graphs like the ones that we were just looking at, or the little sample that we were just looking at. So before we start rolling the videos, which are from your focus groups, the green lines are independents, red is for Republican, blue is for Democrat, red and blue.
That's right.
So tell us what you did.
Well, so we use a technology called the reactor, which allows people to respond on a second-by-second basis to how they feel about these political ads as they're watching them. And so we've sent this out nationwide. It's actually done online, and people are presented with a series of ads and asked to react to them based on how they feel. And so we can see when they're reacting positively or when they're reacting negatively, and then we can interpret what that means and how it impacts
So people
politics.
will see these lines moving across the screen, red for Republican, blue for Democrat, green for independents, and whether they're reacting more positively or more negatively within the 30 seconds of a political ad, right?
Exactly. You've got 30 seconds to convince a voter of your perspective. 50 right in the middle of the graph is neutral. We're looking for ads that work well with the base, with the party that you belong to, as well as across the aisle. Those are the most effective political ads.
Okay, so first we're going to see a block of 3 that you brought along. Marco Rubio, the Republican Tea Party candidate for Senate in Florida, Alan Grayson, and Sharon Engel. So just tell us what we're looking for.
So here we've got 3 different candidates. They're each presenting different messages, some positive, some negative. On the positive side, we're looking for ads that work across the 3 party segments, or the 3 sets of political affiliations, and really get the lines up at the 60 to 70 level. It's about 2/3 of the way up.
And I think this will show us that all 3 of these ads work across party lines, correct?
Right.
Okay, let's check it out.
I'm Marco Rubio. Washington isn't just broke, it's broken. But it won't get better if we keep electing politicians who will say or do anything just to hold office. Government is out of touch, spending is out of control, foreign debt threatens our economic and national security, and typical politicians, they just don't get it. I'm Marco Rubio, and I approve this message because America is the greatest country in the world. But it didn't get that way by accident, and it won't stay that way automatically.
What's the Democratic defense play on that?
Tell the Republicans stop lying.
This guy is what it's all about.
I'm Congressman Alan Grayson, and I approve this message.
We have a fearful society right now. What they're afraid of is that what we're going to be passing down to our children is not liberty and freedom, but debt and deficit. That's why you and I have an opportunity right now to change the direction of our country. Government is not the solution to the problem. Government is the problem. We, the people, are the solution. I'm Sharon Engel, and I approve this message.
All right, so that last one, I don't know if we can put that slide back up at the very end of that video. I don't know if we can do that. But that was Sharon Engel, the very controversial Tea Party candidate in Nevada running against Majority Leader Harry Reid. All 3 parties voters responded positively to that message? We see the curve going straight up.
So one of the most powerful lines of the ads that we've tested, government is not the solution to the problems, government is the problem. Think about how big a switch that is from 2008. And really what's happening is people really have shifted.
Democrats have
Democrats included. Not all Democrats for sure, but on the fringes and among independents, people have shifted. They no longer believe that the solutions that candidate Obama presented are the right solutions for where we need to go from here.
And that middle ad, that was the most divisive of the three. Congressman Alan Grayson, he's from where again?
He's from Florida.
He's from Florida. He's the Democrat running against Rubio?
No, he's in a congressional battle.
Oh, he is.
So he's in a congressional race. He's a very flamboyant congressman.
So he was using images of Rush Limbaugh and people like that as negatives.
Yes.
And then the Republicans obviously didn't like that. The Democrats did.
Right. But what you can see actually from the graph is that Democrats didn't even really respond all that favorably to it. I mean, in terms of being an effective ad, it was very dramatic. It wasn't very effective because it's kind of telling a story that's a little bit worn at this point. And it was polarizing, not going to win him a whole lot of new votes that he didn't already have.
So do you think that we can generalize from that and say that President Obama's current push toward his base, where he's going out and yelling and demonizing the Republicans, is likely to not be very effective?
You know, I think there's this big enthusiasm gap that people are talking about. And to the extent that Democrats are going to stay home and not vote, he's got a responsibility to really motivate that base to come out. And so I think it will help on the margins. The challenge is even if his base comes out to vote, the public on the whole, a lot of Democrats and certainly independents simply don't support what the Democratic Party stands for today. And so, you know, in my prediction, this is going to be a landslide for the Republicans, and they'll have a very short time period to prove that they deserved it.
All right. Now, here's a negative ad that I think you found worked. This is Democratic Senator Barbara Boxer from California going negative against her Republican opponent, Carly Fiorina. Do you want to say anything about this before we see it?
Well, again, you'll see a pretty interesting negative attack. It's all on one topic, and I'll start the ad with that, and then we'll come back to it when we're done.
Let's watch. All right, we're going to obviously fix that problem with the video of the Barbara Boxer ad. And sorry, I thought we could do that real quick.
Well, I'll tell you about negative ads. I mean, what we're going to see that I was going to wait until after we showed the ad is that this is an ad that everybody goes down on, and they go down pretty steeply. It's an intensely negative response to this ad. And what we found in testing negative ads is that if you're going to go negative, you have to do two things. You have to go big and really make it clear what your attack is, and you also have to tap into something that is very much part of the narrative of the victim's campaign. In this case, she's attacking Carly Fiorina about outsourcing, and that's a sore point.
Let's watch this ad.
Carly Fiorina. As CEO, she laid off 30,000 workers and shipped jobs to China.
China, India, Russia, Poland. I know precisely why those jobs go.
Because Fiorina shipped them there. To Shanghai instead of San Jose. Bangalore instead of Burbank. Proudly stamping her products made in China. 30,000 workers gone, while Fiorina took $100 million for herself. Carly Fiorina, outsourcing jobs out for herself.
I'm Barbara Boxer, and I approve this message.
Wow, so that was very clear, as you said it needed to be. She was attacking a very specific thing.
Absolutely, and something that across party lines, people are opposed to candidates who represent the interests of companies that ship jobs overseas. Plain and simple.
And so the issue of protectionism, of keeping jobs here, of being against free trade in the sense we usually use that term, you think that's an issue that resonates that either party could capitalize on?
Here's what's really interesting. There are three words that you use two, protectionism and free trade. I used a third, outsourcing. People hate outsourcing. it's much more polarizing when you talk about protectionism or free trade. But when it comes to outsourcing, people hear that word and they're against it. And that's why this ad was effective.
All right, interesting. So let's see, the next ad that we're going to see compares Barack Obama and Sarah Palin. And so I think we're going to see that they use more of the same language than one might suspect, right?
This is not an ad, something that we put together to show just how much they're using the same language. Palin in 2010, candidate Obama in 2008.
Let's watch.
There is something happening when men and women in Des Moines and Davenport,
in places like Des Moines and Davenport,
send me the bipartisan legislation.
we need bipartisan solutions.
bipartisan,
Bipartisan.
bipartisan,
Bipartisan.
The responsibility to ensure that we do not pass on to them a debt they cannot pay.
They're sticking our kids with the bill. That's the same old in Washington, D.C.
the same old Washington. The challenges we face require tough choices.
We've got huge challenges to overcome in this country.
All of the candidates in this race have good ideas.
We put our ideas and our experience out there on the table.
We have been told we cannot do this by a chorus of cynics.
Opponents of this message, they're seeking to marginalize this movement. When people are willing and to meet halfway and stand up for common sense solutions and values, then we want to work with them.
Let's try common sense. A novel concept. Change in this country comes not from the top down, but from the bottom up.
Our government's supposed to serve from the bottom up and not move toward this top-down big government takeover.
The top down, not the bottom up.
We are ready to take this country in a fundamentally new direction.
We have hope that we can move things in the right direction. Government is supposed to be working for the people.
This is a government of and by and for the people.
If you want real leadership and not just rhetoric.
Tone down the rhetoric a little bit. They are ready to turn the page. They're ready to write a new chapter in American history.
The Tea
So did the same robot write both their speeches?
I think we learn a couple things from this. One is that that Americans respond to this idea of a positive outlook on where we can take this country. And in many ways, particularly among independents, we're less concerned with how we get there than where we're going. And that's why this worked in 2008, and it brought in independence, and it's why it's bringing independence to the Tea Party today.
Now, did you test that video or those words in Sarah Palin's mouth and those words from Barack Obama's mouth to audiences of both Democrats and Republicans?
We have not actually tested that yet.
Because I would be curious. I mean, their reputations so precede them that when Sarah Palin says those things, I can imagine that Democrats are thinking, oh, right. Or, oh, I know what she really means by that. Oh, yeah, if people come halfway for compromise, she's really going to endorse something that's not a totally right-wing agenda. Those kinds of reactions. Yeah. Can you inoculate against that?
No. I mean, but with independents, they don't necessarily feel the same way. And so they're willing to listen to what Sarah Palin has to say, and they're willing to listen to what Barack Obama has to say. And I think one of the interesting things about this election cycle is that 2008 was framed very much as a hope and change election. The positive side of what Obama had to say was the story. In this case, it's really the negative side. This positive side hasn't been the focus, and yet the language is really very much the same.
Right, and yet the ads that you've shown here today that are reacted to the most positively by your focus group are the positive messages. Sharon Angle in Nevada, if she's there to criticize what Harry Reid has done, what Obama has done, what the Democrats have done that she considers extreme, the thing that people reacted to was when she was speaking a language of hope, which is not immediately what people think of with respect to the Tea Party.
No, but really it's about change. It's about changing where we are. Some say it's about going backwards. They would say it's about going to a place where government has less involvement in our lives than what's happened over the last 2 years. But Obama was saying the same thing. He was trying to get rid of the special interests. He was trying to get rid of everything that had happened in the Bush era. It's just that the sides have flipped in this case.
But it's still a freedom from, like, get the government off my back, as opposed to a freedom to, as Obama might have said, you'll be free to have health care.
Yeah, but he also said it was freedom from insurance companies, it was freedom from special interests. It's just freedom from different influences. Mm-hmm. It really does match up very closely once you break it down.
All right, so here is a mashup from Maslansky of some Democrats running against their own party in the midterm elections. Watch these campaign commercials and the audience reactions to them.
I've heard my constituents, and they don't want a liberal running the House. They want a conservative. I'm going to vote for the person that will allow me to best represent my constituents. I've already voted to repeal a portion of it, and I won't stop there. And anyone who tells you otherwise is just downright lying to you. I'm the most independent member of Congress, and what I try to do is bring people together to make good things happen for our country. I'm Bobby Bright, and I approve this message, and I sure hope you do too.
I'm Bill Owens, and I approve this message.
Wall Street people sure know how to lie with numbers. Bill Owens didn't vote with Nancy Pelosi 93% of the time. He voted with the Republican leader 63% of the time. And Bill Owens strengthened Medicare with better prescription drug coverage. Matt Doheny wants to replace Medicare with private vouchers and reduce benefits. He promoted it with his own money. And Matt Doheny said he wants to cut Social Security benefits too. Matt Doheny won't stand up for us.
I'm Jim Marshall, and I approve this message.
Georgia is a long way from San Francisco, and Jim Marshall is a long way from Nancy Pelosi. Jim Marshall doesn't support Nancy Pelosi. He voted the same as Republican leaders 65% of the time. Jim Marshall worked and voted against Pelosi's $1 trillion health care bill because we can't afford it. And Jim Marshall is endorsed by the NRA, Right to Life, and the Chamber of Commerce. They wouldn't have anything to do with a Nancy Pelosi supporter.
And Jim Marshall is a Democrat?
A Democrat.
Is he just running as a fake Republican?
Well, he's in a very conservative district, and so he's running where he thinks he needs to run in order to capture enough votes to win. He's doing everything that he can to alienate anyone in the Democratic Party in that district.
Does that ever work? As they say, why would somebody vote for a fake Republican when they can vote for a real Republican?
Well, you know, it depends on the overall trends. In 2008, it did work. They got a lot of conservative Democrats who were able to come in very conservative districts. It's a big question mark as to whether or not it'll happen now. It is hard to understand why a Republican would vote for a Democrat over a Republican if their views are largely the same.
And it was interesting that in that middle ad from Owens in upstate New York, when he was distancing himself from Nancy Pelosi, all three political parties' voters, I guess in his district, were reacting positively. When he started criticizing the Republican positions, like privatizing Social Security, it all went down.
Yeah, you know, there are two things. One is it's very difficult to mix a positive and a negative message in one ad. I think it's difficult for us as consumers of that message to really understand what's going on. It's very easy to attack Nancy Pelosi today.
What should we look at in these last 10 to 13 days of the campaign? Quick.
Well, I think it's going to get more negative. I mean, it just fundamentally, whether or not that's the right approach over the long term or not, people are going to try and further distance themselves, find that real zinger to cause people to either stay home or vote against their opponents.
Very instructive, very educational. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Here are this week's online video picks. Have you ever seen a bed bug up close? Entomologist Louis Sorkin keeps a colony of the critters in his lab at the Museum of Natural History. He's looking for a chink in their armor. This is video pick number 1.
Media coverage online or in television, you know, explains about searching the bed, searching the mattress, searching behind the walls, look in the walls, look behind pictures, picture frames. And the problem is that most of the media then doesn't show you what bed bugs really look like. So you really don't have any idea of what you're looking for. They may only show adult bed bugs, and that's 1/6 of the population is over a 1/4 inch long, or less than a 1/4 inch long, but reddish brown, and that's an adult bed bug. But the youngest bed bugs are about 1 millimeter when they're born, and they're pale white, and they blend in with the background. Well, a small infestation actually could be one female who's mated, and then she's, you know, in your home or on a package you brought in or clothing or something, and that's all it needs, because then she produces a few hundred eggs in her lifetime. But she'll probably in that first month maybe lay 5 to 10 eggs. And then she'd have to mate again in order to have sperm to produce more eggs. And she'd have to feed to make more eggs and also nourish the sperm that she would have inside her. If you wait too long to get rid of an infestation, your population of bed bugs really increase, and you have them in so many more places of your home than if you'd started months before. There is no magic bullet to get rid of bedbug infestations. If there were one product that worked that way, then we wouldn't have a problem anymore.
Turns out even DDT was not the magic bullet. Before it was banned here about 40 years ago, bedbugs had adapted to it. Apparently there is a magic bullet for dealing with criminals and others that the police deem out of control, and its name is the X26 from Taser International. It's a new taser that claims to be safer but more effective because it penetrates clothing better than the old M26 that police have been using for more than a decade. This is video number 2.
Result is a high-performance, highly efficient, less lethal weapon that has an incapacitating effect even greater than the M26. In a weapon that is 60% smaller and consumes less than 1/5 the power. This increase in efficiency enables the X26 to operate for over 300 discharges or up to 10 years before replacing the digital power magazine. The central information display shows the exact percentage of battery life and the time to completion of each energy burst. Integrated laser sighting and low-intensity lights designate the target and provide nighttime illumination. The X26 USB data port stores the time, date, and duration of the last 2,000 firings of the weapon. The optional spare cartridge magazine carries an extra cartridge while extending the handle for greater grip. And to take advantage of the dramatically smaller size, every X26 comes with an exoskeleton holster for convenient full-time carry, because there isn't always time to call for a taser or go back to the car. Improve officer safety. Avoid litigation. Save lives. Taser X26.
The idea of being tased is not a pleasant thought. But if the new taser we used on knife-wielding Emmanuel Paulino last month, it might have knocked him out through his clothing, and the New York City police probably would not have shot him dead. Of course, tasering and shooting are the exception in police work. In video number 3, we take a look at the gentle interview technique used by an Illinois state trooper in a video from a war protester and YouTube user, Mr. Matt, aka Biological Observer.
July 2nd, we're in Effingham. So we've been here about an hour. There's been no police contacts yet, so Effingham, Illinois obeys the Constitution.
City come out and talk to you?
No, what can we do for you?
City didn't come out and talk to you guys?
Uh-uh.
All right, just seeing what's going on. Real Christians don't choose war. Very good. Protesting the war?
Well, not really. We're protesting Christian support of the war.
You got the bad job here. You have to sit on the grass. You guys take turns?
Well, he forgot his sign, so he's...
That's part of the punishment?
I got the best job. I just pray.
Nothing wrong with that.
Spirit to convict people.
Nothing wrong with that.
We're just getting ready to take off.
All right. Where are you guys from? They're on Effingham or?
Denver.
Denver?
Yeah, we're walking across the country.
So you guys going across country, heading to East Coast now, or?
Washington, D.C.
And then you're gonna, very good. Good luck to you guys. I just heard on the radio something about somebody in an orange jumpsuit. We didn't know we had someone escaped from the, the sheriff's department. All right, guys, good luck.
Lord bless you, sir.
You too.
Comment on that. That's how our police contacts should be. Constitutional. Didn't ask for our ID. Just got a call, want to make sure we were all right. Police are here to serve us.
One good cop, even according to one war protester. Video number 4 is Libertarian Reason TV's argument against proposed legislation like the Disclose Act, which would force the disclosure of donor lists to causes. They want anonymous speech protected. So they created what an attack ad against the Federalist Papers might have looked like had there been YouTube in revolutionary days. The Federalist Papers, you recall, were an argument advocating the passage of the Constitution. They were published anonymously under the name Publius.
I haven't been any place
where there aren't dozens of ads now being run and nobody knows who's behind them.
The Health and Human Services Secretary is right. Dangerous, unnamed operatives are trying to influence your vote, attacking financial reform, questioning national defense, and undercutting tax legislation. Anonymous political speech is inciting nothing short of radical, transformative change. Who is Publius? And why should we trust his Federalist Papers?
James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay turned out to be hiding behind the name Publius, but there's no covering up the fact that Jack Black is behind fostering a more civil dialogue, which is the subject of our final video. Let's watch and learn as professional misinformant Nathan Spuman goes undercover to spread anti-Obama rhetoric inside an elementary school. This message brought to you by Healthcare for America Now.
And then an army of 16,000 IRS agents come to your house and put you in jail if you don't buy health insurance.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen. Are you a communist? They're coming with guns and wild dogs. And after they kill your parents, they're gonna put 1,000 beans up your noses and fart on your beds!
Bethany, go easy. You got.
Look, what can we do to stop it? You can yell at the top of your lungs! I don't want Obama beans up my nose!
And this is how you spell enough.
You lie! You hate America!
No, Bethany, it's a fact. This is how you spell enough.
Oh, so this is how you spell the word enough. There's no need for those letters. What could this mean? G-H, God haters. G-H, good health. Health care. Obamacare!
Okay, you know what, Bethany? Why don't you go back to
Don't you see? This woman is a socialist IRS agent.
What?
Armed with thousands of beans that she will put up your noses. And beans?
Terrorists!
And you spell enough with an F for freedom!
And those are this week's online video picks. The role of the internet in enabling dissent in countries with repressive governments, not ours, has been widely debated. The examples most often looked at are Iran and China. But what about that other country with a tightly controlled political system, Russia? Harvard's Berkman Center for the Internet and Society has undertaken a 2-year study of the internet in Russian society, and it has just released its first report on the Russian blogosphere. Here to tell us about the findings and to show some of them in graphic form are Karina Alexanyan, an analyst at Berkman's Internet and Democracy Russia Project, and John Kelly, founder and lead scientist of Morningside Analytics, a company that analyzes and maps social networks around the world. Thank you both very much for coming in. We appreciate it. Karina, give us a broad overview of the internet as it's used in Russia. Is it much different from here?
Okay, well, what's important to remember is that the internet in Russia is still an elite medium, and it's an urban-centered medium. So nationwide, the internet penetration is about 35%, whereas in the US, it's closer to 80. And in urban centers like Moscow, St. Petersburg, it's more like 60. So people, when you're looking at the internet, you're looking at kind of an elite urban group.
And to what extent does the Russian government limit or monitor online discourse?
Overtly, there's no monitoring or limiting. There's very little control. People are free to say what they can. The difference is that it is marginalized because there's not as many users and the penetration is not as intense. And where people are getting their news is mostly from the television, which is state-controlled.
And not from the internet because it's not available, because they're afraid what the government will do to them if they go to the wrong sites?
Yeah, I don't think it's completely different in Russia than China. There isn't a fear that you can't go to a certain internet site or whatever. There's a complete freedom to it. It's just there's kind of a bifurcation of the people that have access to it and are regular users or daily users, and the kind of people that are watching more television and just are not going online, and they see it sort of as a luxury item that is just not part of their lives.
And John, tell us how you analyzed Russian blogs.
Mm-hmm. Well, we do social network analysis of the links in the blog posts, essentially. So we harvested data on over 5 million Russian blogs. We've been storing all that data for about a year and a half. And then we use social network analysis to find the patterns in the discussion, so the relationships between the bloggers, who cites who. We analyze the citation networks as well as networks of everything else that the bloggers write about, which, a lot of which is mainstream media articles, or they're linking to certain organizations. And we do large-scale statistical analysis of that stuff in order to find the patterns in the blogger behavior. And then on top of that, we layer a lot of qualitative analysis to go in and try and figure out what makes these different parts of the Russian blogosphere tick.
So you have some graphics that you're going to show us that represent your findings?
We do. We've got a lot of graphics, and we've brought just a handful in.
All right. Yep. So let's put up the first visual. What are we looking at here?
Well, this is one of the very first mappings we ever did of the Russian blogosphere, and we took a kind of, we think of it as a telescope, analytic telescope, and that we developed for looking at the US blogosphere and others. And when we pointed it at Russia, this is what we saw, and it was perplexing. And what we found was that most Russian bloggers, unlike bloggers elsewhere, prefer platforms that we call social network hybrids. And so these are platforms that combine features of open blog platforms like Blogspot or WordPress with the sort of closed social networking features of a site like Facebook. And because of that, Russian bloggers on one platform very seldomly link to bloggers on others, and most of the links are internal. So we thought that we had an extremely divided network in Russia. And if we go to the next image, we'll see how that is evolved.
Let's do that. Can we go right on to the next image?
Yep. So what we found is what we called a discussion core, where you had bloggers from different platforms, but mainly those on the LiveJournal platform, who did in fact cross-link and link to one another very frequently. And this is where all the discussion around politics, as well as other public aspects of public life, including cultural discussions, was taking place.
So tell us more about this. I feel like I'm looking at the Milky Way here or something.
Well, let's go another slide forward. We've got a couple that will make it easier to explain the methodology. So in these social network diagrams, every dot represents a blogger, and the size is the number of other bloggers in the network linking to them. So it's the A-listers are the big ones. Mm-hmm. And then the position is the result of a physics model algorithm in which you imagine there's a general force like a wind trying to blow all the dots off the circle. And when bloggers cite one another and they link, they're pulled together as though by gravity or a spring. And you end up with bloggers then close to those in the map with whom they are densely interconnected. And those interconnections usually arise because they have some political similarity or some similarity of interest.
And what does it mean on the ground? Who are some of these A-listers and what are they writing about?
Yep, well, let's take a look at the next slide, which will take us another building block in the story. So now we've added these colors to it, and this is the result of a statistical analysis that finds groups of bloggers that link to similar stuff over long periods of time. And then those are the ones that lets us divide the network into meaningful groups. And then we can look at these different groups and figure out which are the ones that are making a difference around topics like politics.
I think Jackson Pollock predicted this.
It did, yeah.
So well, the map looks like this. This is all automated. And then we have humans go in and look at some of the blogs. Mm-hmm. And then we try to understand that each color is a cluster. And then we try to kind of put labels on the clusters depending on what people are talking about, what are they linking to. And we identified more politically oriented, more public discourse oriented, more culturally oriented, regional clusters that are represented by various groups like expatriates and people from outside of Russia and within Russia. So there's a whole diversity of people talking there.
So talk to me. What are people linking to? What are people talking about?
Well, you want to do it? I can do it.
It's the sort of magic of this approach is that you find out they're linking to different things and talking about different things in different parts of the network. So the study we just released was really focused on politics, and what we found was a wide range of Russian political bloggers. There were those that were more aligned with major political movements in Russia. For instance, a group we call the Democratic Opposition. Those are ones that support Garry Kasparov, who's opposed to the Putin government. And those that are on the other side of the fence, you've got the nationalists, which include a lot of more or less racist groups, as well as those that sort of think Stalin was a pretty good guy. But the vast majority of Russian political bloggers, unlike, for instance, their American counterparts, are not standing under a flag or affiliating themselves with a major ideological position. Instead, what we found is that, by and large, most Russian political bloggers present themselves as independent thinkers with their own take on the facts and write about politics from a very independent standpoint.
And does activism trickle up from the ground into these blogs, which I gather are more written by people who are elite in Russia? Or does activism start top down, or is it not even really there?
I would say that activism is there, and we actually identified a cluster that we called social activists and environmentalists and charity. So there's a lot of people who are interested in really local grassroots causes and preservationists, like building preservationists and environmental issues and healthcare and children. And there is definitely a group of people that are talking about that. And there are some cases where that's gone, from online to offline, like a motorist movement in Russia that was very popular, that had to do with people being upset about various official figures and their abuse of power.
So let's see the next slide, the next graphic, and you tell us what we're seeing here now in this word cluster.
So what we did, once we've divided the network into these different clusters, we can look at what one cluster does more than the others. And included in that are different words that they use more frequently. This happens to be the word cloud for the nationalist cluster. And so you see the prominence of words like USSR, Russian, country. So there's a lot of references to patriotism and to the country, the state, the national identity. And if you look at these for other clusters of bloggers, you get very different words.
One of the criticisms of the web here in the US is that it divides people into clusters, into echo chambers, where they only talk to politically like-minded people, and so people talk to each other less and hear each other less. Is that an issue in Russia?
Well, let's take a look at the next slide. I think may address this. So this is on the right you have the American blogosphere, and on the left you have the Russian. And if you just take a look at the American side, you see big conservative in red and liberal in blue clusters. The American blogosphere divides very, very cleanly on the political side into these so-called echo chambers, liberal and conservative. You do not find the same thing in Russia. So even though Russian nationalist bloggers are slightly more likely to link to themselves, they still link to their political enemies, if you will, or ideological enemies, far more frequently than American bloggers do.
And Karina, what does it mean on the ground? Does political activism online ever have success in Russia? Like we saw, the online contribution to the election of Barack Obama, or anything at a more issue-oriented level?
Yeah, nothing at that level. I mean, that was really a major event here in the U.S. I would say that the issue in Russia is that the internet and internet activism is marginalized. So there are events where, like the drivers' movement, where protests are arranged online and there's groups that are organized online, but there's nothing that has had a hugely transformative role as yet. We don't know if, in the future they may be. Any
minor successes? Any particular issues that break out?
Well, as an example, there was an accident that occurred in Russia where a major official and two cars hit, and they hit a woman doctor and her daughter and killed them. And the police said that it was the victim's fault. And in the internet, on the blogosphere, there was a huge outcry, and they really wouldn't kind of let that issue die. And had the executive, there was a powerful oil executive, they persecuted him, but nothing actually there was an outcry, there was a lot of noise. The issue wasn't allowed to go away maybe as easily as it would have, but in the end it wasn't really resolved. He didn't end up going to jail, and so you couldn't really call it a success.
And you know what I'm curious about? There has been some horrible violence against journalists in Russia who've been too outspoken, like the murder of Anna Politkovskaya, I never get that right. And bloggers are almost by definition outspoken as journalists go. Has there been any violence? Have there been any threats?
Well, there has been some repercussions against bloggers, but not in the urban centers, not in Moscow, not in St. Petersburg, a little bit on the outskirts, and nothing that has been permanent and nothing to this degree of danger, because as John can say, the press is taken far more seriously than the blogosphere.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's important to understand in Russia, like some other places, is that the blogosphere is considered a fairly marginal location for discussion. So even a newspaper that may have a smaller readership than a particular Russian blogger is still considered far more serious than the blogger.
But is it a sign of Russia opening up, of an inevitability of Russia opening up in terms of political discourse, that there is as much out there now as you have documented?
Well, I think the key question is that online discourse in any society interacts with with the political system of that society. And the political systems of some societies aren't particularly open to it. So people can be saying anything in the world online. The government doesn't have to be persecuting them, and it still might not matter very much. And I think that's the real question in Russia, is when will it start to matter?
If a blog post falls in the forest and nobody hears it, is there noise? But maybe in a generation with these seeds.
Maybe. But you know, in some ways you see China. Some people say that China, which is much more dominating in terms of its controls over the internet and its surveillance of what citizens say, in some cases the state is using that surveillance of the online conversation to affect governance in ways that are designed to make people more happy. I mean, some people even call that democracy 2.0, that you can have an authoritarian government which is able to mine all of the social media data to become more responsive to citizen interests. So it's not our model of democracy, but it is something that I think we're going to want to keep our eyes on.
Did you want to add to that?
I just thought it was interesting.
And with that interesting thought, we leave it. Thank you both very much for coming in. Coming up, art through competition in the city. Stay with us.
This is CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
Did you know that there are 8 national parks in New York City? There are also 8 parking spaces in New York City. But that's something else. New York City has Federal Hall, where George Washington became our first president, the Statue of Liberty, and Gateway with beautiful beaches and protected wildlife. New York City has a range of national parks you won't find anywhere else, because you cannot move a national park. It's a park. Even if you wanted to get it out of here, you couldn't. America's spirit lives in our national parks.
Ma, guess what? I went back to college. No, I didn't quit my job. I'm finishing my degree with a CUNY Online Bachelor's in Business. I interact online with real City University of New York faculty on a schedule that fits my busy life. Ma, you should look who's teaching at CUNY. And it all leads to a high-quality Bachelor of Science degree in business. I can attend class anywhere, anytime. Yes, Mom, even at your house Friday night for dinner.
The CUNY Online Baccalaureate. Get back to business.
It's one of the many ways to fight osteoarthritis pain. For more information on managing pain, go to fightarthritispain.org.
Thousands of visual artists in the city face a problem: how to get their work seen by curators and the public. But now the EDC, the city's Economic Development Corporation, is helping. It has funded a web-based contest called Curate NYC, in which artists were asked to upload a single work for display. More than 1,000 entries streamed in, about 1,200. The winners were picked yesterday. Among them, works like this. and this. The artists don't receive prize money, but they do get exposure on the web, and their work will be seen in 3 city-owned spaces around town. Teresa Vasquez of the EDC thought up the contest idea, but she says it would never have happened but for the creativity of the 2 artist entrepreneurs we are about to meet. They figured out how to safely display not just a winner or 2, but all 150 winners.
And Danny's proposal, and it really blew my mind, was that they solved for these problems. They took risks, they absolutely thought creatively, and they said, you know, what we can do here is exhibit 150 artists. And we can do so in a way that doesn't harm their artwork and really works with the type of space that we have at the Brew Pub, at Essex Street, and at La Marqueta. And so they took a risk, and they proposed doing these postcards, the images of the artist's work, and mounting those postcards on what we call our pop-up walls, and taking those walls around the city.
The Danny and Brian that Teresa Vasquez so loves working with are here now. They are Danny Simmons and Brian Tate. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian.
And we'll see some other examples as we go along of these winning artworks in postcard form. But Danny, you don't even like to use the word winners.
No, Brian and I don't think of these people as winners or losers. They were selected by a group panel of 10 curators. But I think that everybody who participated in this program is a winner. Their work gets seen by thousands of people who visit the website, thousands all over the nation, all over the world, you know. So, you know, everybody who participates is really a winner.
And I'm not sure if we have the web address up yet, so tell people exactly where they can go to see all this art.
It's curatenyc.org.
Very simple, curatenyc.org.
We try to keep it simple.
Yeah, we keep it pretty simple.
That's right. Accessible. It's all about access.
And
well, that's what it's about.
To pick up on Danny's comment, we not only got the 1,200 entries within a 3-week time span, but we also got, at that time, we tracked about 600,000 web hits within the 3 weeks. So people are looking at this. People are looking at this work.
And who are these 1,200 artists? What's the range?
All over the map. I mean, we have older artists, we have younger artists, we even have a few student artists. All disciplines. We look for all disciplines. We had photographs, stills of movies, photographs of sculpture.
Sure.
I mean, everywhere. If you're an artist, you were in it.
Let's take a look at one.
Work from across the 5 boroughs, a real diversity of gender, ethnicity, a lot of different work up there from a lot of different people.
We'll just scroll through a few here.
Sure.
Go ahead, Danny.
I mean, watching the process, you know, as Teresa says, it was kind of scary. When you put it out there, you don't know who's going to respond. And as we watched the work roll in over the 3-week period, we were just amazed at the breadth of the work, but just, you know, the enthusiasm with the people. You know, they were emailing us the whole time they were away. Brian was fielding all these emails, and he'd send me the email, this guy this, and this woman this, and it was just a frenzy of artists just like really believing in the project and loving what we were doing.
So what do you think this says about the state of art and the arts in New York City? It is supposed to be so much of what New York City is about, and yet with the recession, with the price of housing being so high, all these different things, people are always questioning whether artists can make it in New York City anymore.
Well, I guess a couple of things is that, you know, New York City is a hub of art nationally and beyond. And from a marketing perspective, just to look at that for a second, you know, the arts is so critical to New York City's identity as a destination.
And economy.
And economy. Yeah. I mean, the artists play a vital, irreplaceable role in defining New York City and in keeping that engine running.
And you mentioned a key word, which is the economy. And this is not just something that a bunch of artists got together and tried to do. I want to play a short clip, and then you can follow up on it.
So I got some economy stuff.
Well, the city's Economic Development Corporation chief, Seth Pinsky. We talked to him at his office yesterday and asked why the city itself got involved in this kind of artist competition. Check it out.
helping artists to become more successful, helping the next generation of artists to become recognized. What we're doing is we're regenerating that economic sector, and we're ensuring that there's a bench that can grow into the giants of the next generation. The second advantage of this program is that in order for New York to compete with other global centers in the 21st century, our hypothesis is that one of the things that we need to do is to become even more of a creative center than we are today, and not just creativity in the arts, but creativity more generally, and that creativity feeds off of itself. So to the extent that we have fashion designers, that we have artists, that we have people who are creating new applications for cellular phones and for computers, those people all feed off of one another. And so in helping the arts, which is an important part of that creative community, we're helping the ecosystem more generally. And then the third benefit that this program has is that in addition to being a direct economic generator, the arts are also an indirect economic generator in that they're part of what makes New York attractive to people in other industries. So even if the arts don't necessarily directly impact the bottom line of an investment bank or an advertising agency, just the fact that New York is a place where you can find a vital art scene and where you can be challenged by the arts makes New York more desirable to those other industries, which of course is of great benefit to the city as well.
All right. The arts meet economic optimism.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with what Seth has to say. However, the city also, and has done so through EDC, needs to make an investment and more investments in the arts as we move forward. One of the problems, and we discussed this when we talked on the radio, is that it's harder for now than ever before for artists to stay and work in the city. Not only is living space gone way up, but a lot of the industrial space that was used before for studios are gone. So the city and through the Cultural Affairs Department and the Buildings Department need to really identify properties that can be used to help spur what Steph's trying to say. We need to create an environment within New York City that will lend to those things. Artists are really struggling to try to just stay here. They want to be a part of the scene, and we have the galleries here, and we have the outlets for the artists, but we don't have the infrastructure like we used to, like Westbeth and places like that. We don't have that like we used to have for artists to really thrive here like they used to.
But is that government's role? I mean, looking back a generation when artists started to live in lofts in Soho, that was kind of in the private sector, and those were underutilized spaces, so artists were able to move in for relatively low rent. And then it became seen as an artist district, and the government stepped in to help preserve it, you know, with loft laws and things like that, and to some degree. So is it just a matter now of going out to, you know, the outer reaches of Brooklyn, or even outside the city limits into parts of New Jersey, or whatever it might be?
Go
ahead, Danny.
A lot of artists, especially in the east, on the Lower East Side and places, were able to get buildings very cheaply back in the days, and then fix them up as artist co-ops and condominiums, and you know, you get a building for $1 and you have to fix it up and certify the building. That's no longer there. Developments like Westbeth, where artists live, are no longer there. So I mean, there has to be a role for the city. If they have a stake, a real stake in artists staying and prospering within the city, it may not have been their role in the past, but it really needs to be a role that they take on in the future in order to ensure that New York City stays the hub that Brian was talking about.
Right. Something's out there because 1,200 people entered your competition.
Well, you know, and to piggyback on Danny's comments is that, you know, the entire city benefits from the work of these artists, you know, and what they bring to the life of the city. So certainly government has a role, as does private sector, as does, you know, the nonprofit sector. Everybody's got a role here, you know. And one of the things that we find, our arts nonprofit organization, Full Spectrum Experience, which is what, you know, how we conducted this project, you know, we found through the work that we've been doing over the last few years that there's a real community, and there's a hunger for community, not only among artists, but also among people who appreciate the arts. And everybody's got a role to play because everyone benefits when that type of dialogue is taking place.
We're going to go out in a minute just by seeing some more examples of the winning entries scroll through.
Sure.
But what did you learn from this about the kind of art that people are making? What's the creative moment in 2010 in New York City? Go ahead, Danny.
No, well, I will tell you what one of our curators said, and this is caveat, because I think the art is really, really great, and but she thought that a lot of the art was very dark. Yeah. And that might reflect the economic times that we're in. That might reflect all the pressures that are on artists. We haven't been able to do any deep analysis of it, but a number of people said the art looks dark and it doesn't look all that happy. And you know, art is a reflection of the times. And so
I would say that the work has some bite.
Good way.
And what'll make people go to these 3 physical venues besides the website and look at art displayed in postcard size form?
Well, not only is the work incredible, but the postcards, which we've seen, are very dynamic and dramatic. And as we mentioned before, you know, 2 of the hottest projects in New York City, 2 of the hottest arts projects in New York City are postcard oriented. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like it's a, you know, very radical kind of idea, and I suppose there is some radical idea to it. But we've built on some things that are already there that have been working very well.
And tell us again, for people's interest, when and where they can go to these venues?
Sure. The exhibitions are up from October 21 through 31, and we will be at Rush Arts Gallery in Chelsea. We'll be at Essex Street Market.
La Marqueta.
La Marqueta.
Mm-hmm.
Up in Harlem,
right.
And we'll also be over on Staten Island at the Yankee Stadium.
Not Yankee Stadium.
Snug Harbor?
St. George's Stadium or something.
Oh, the Staten Island Yankees ballpark?
Yeah.
Yes,
that's
it.
And online?
Oh, it is Yankees, huh?
Yeah, and online,
okay.
Online, yes, it's Yankees.
Okay.
Online at CurateNYC.org.
So thank you very much. I hear you're going to do this again next year.
Well, we haven't heard that yet.
I hear you hope.
We've heard rumors. We've heard rumors. But we really had I just want to say, really had a real good time working with EDC. They've been great partners on this, and we share a common vision of helping artists become more vested in the public.
And let's go out with a few more winning images.
Thank you.
Guys, thanks again for coming in.
Thanks.
We'll be checking out the website.
Cool. Take care.
And that's it for this week's show. See us anytime at brianlehrer.tv and tune into my radio show weekday mornings at 10 on WNYC Radio. Tomorrow, will the new bank reform law drive jobs from New York? Thanks for watching, and as Ginny Thomas, wife of Justice Clarence Thomas, says, have a nice day.